I'm Freddy Krueger, huh, bitch. Bitch, bitch, bitch. Bitchy, bitch, bitch. Ha, ha, ha. I have this sweet collection. Blah, blah, blah. So many special features. Oh, and I'm so thick with movies. Bitch, 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 bitch. Bitch. Huh. Wait a second. What's that over there? What could it be? It's a bird. It's a plane. No, it's boom. It's fuck you, man. Bitch. Why won't you die?
Did you know that a young boy drowned the year before those two others were killed? The counselors weren't paying any attention. They were making love while that young boy drowned. His name was Jason.
Freddy versus Jason. Place your bets. It's literally a line that no one could possibly get. You could give Marlon fucking Brando, at the height of his career, that line. Freddy versus... I can't do Marlon Brando. No way that anyone could ever do it right. You know, Freddy versus Jason, place your bets. No one. It's impossible to get right. And yet there it is in the trailer for this movie. This delightfully nostalgic romp for me.
Freddy versus Jason.
Place your bets.
Freddy vs. Jason used to be my shit. I remember getting the DVD for this movie way back in the day. This was the first of either franchise that I saw in theaters. Bear in mind, I'm not that old. I know I look older than I am, but I was born in 1990, the year of our Lord, 1990. So I'm a youngin', and so I was 13 years old when I saw this movie in theaters, and I was pumped. And so I immediately bought it on DVD as soon as it came out, tore through the extras, and watched it, I don't even know how many times. I watched the fuck out of Freddy vs. Jason, and I loved it. It was an integral part of my life for so long. And, you know, throughout my 20s, I didn't watch it as much. I had so many more movies to watch at that point. You know, I wasn't in that high school mode of just rewatching stuff again and again. I had to keep going and going. And, you know, I found myself gravitating more towards the other films in the franchises. Obviously, Nightmare on Elm Street has some really great shit that's very rewatchable. We've already talked about how rewatchable a lot of the Friday the 13th films are. So, you know, it did kind of not fade away, but it kind of became one of those movies that I more referenced as being a favorite than actually watched very often. So, I haven't watched Freddy vs. Jason in probably 2 years, I'm going to say. Roughly 3 years. Hard to say. It's been a busy few years for me. But haven't watched it in a while. And so decided, you know what? Might as well give it another crack since I literally have to for this video series. So I watched it. And, you know, after a while, nostalgia wears off. And I hate to say that. Let's just go through this thing. So this is actually a movie that was in development for a long time. They started development on this back around the time Jason Goes to Hell was made. It was either like right around there or right after the conversation started, and it took them a while to get it right. I mean, you know, if it was a decade between movies, basically. It was 10 years since Jason Goes to Hell came out that we actually got this film. So it was, you know, it was a project that was in development hell for a long time. And eventually things worked out. A lot of scripts were passed around, a lot of concepts, a lot of writers came on board, directors came on board, a lot of stuff happened. And finally, New Line figured it all out, along with Sean Cunningham, and they made the movie. They got Robert Englund to come back as Freddy, and they got Ken Kersinger of 2 stunts in Jason Takes Manhattan. Well, 3 stunts, I guess, but 2 stunts as Jason in Jason Takes Manhattan. Fame. And they made a movie, and it came out in 2003, and it did gangbusters. It was, I think, the highest grossing film for either franchise at that point. It also had a massive budget. I think it was like 25 million or something, $30 million, which for that franchise, especially for Friday the 13th, I don't know the Nightmare on Elm Street budgets off the top of my head, but the Jason budgets, the Friday the 13th budgets, I think the biggest one up until this point was like maybe 15 million, if that. So like this was at least twice as much money as any previous Friday the 13th. So this is comparatively a huge budget. And so we got not only Freddy and Jason together on screen for the first time properly, but we also got a big budget slasher flick for both of these series. So that, that was a big deal. And it starts appropriately epic. I mean, you get this opening montage that kind of exposes the initial flaw with the film, which is that it's really more of a Nightmare on Elm Street film. Jason could easily be replaced by any undead killer, and it really wouldn't change the film itself all that much. I mean, obviously the marketing would not be there anymore, and we have a lot of problems, but there's not a whole lot integral to his mythology that takes place here other than his mommy issues, really. But it starts with this opening montage that is so epic. It goes through and it's just Freddy ranting about how everybody forgot about him, and you get all these clips from the previous Nightmare on Elm Street movies. Of course, you don't get any clips from the previous Friday movies because, again, this is a Freddy movie. And it feels really epic and awesome. You get this cool opener in Jason's head at Camp Crystal Lake, and then it dives into this great, very 2003 credits sequence where we get the flesh all sliced up, and then it goes to the actual title, and it's got this nah! Music going on. It's so fucking sick. And then the rest of the movie happens, and it is a mixed bag. That's what I'm going to call it. I'm going to call it a mixed bag. Now, first off, as I said, this had a bigger budget. They got Ronnie Yu to direct. And Ronnie Yu, he had previously done Bride of Chucky. He had a style all his own. And this is very much a Ronnie Yu movie. It definitely feels like his film. It has his fingerprints all over it. I've seen a few people reference that as a positive, and I think there is something great about having directors come on board films and having, their unique styles. I definitely can think of a few directors who I would like to see their stamp on a Friday the 13th movie, just because I'm very curious. And Nightmare on Elm Street, of course, you got like Rennie Harlan coming in and doing his thing, and that movie's very much a Rennie Harlan film. So, there is something to be said about a filmmaker's, stamp. The negative here is that Ronnie Yu's direction and Fred Murphy's cinematography is again, it's very 2003. There's a lot of awful, jittery fucking around with the frame rate.
The kid?
Can't you see I'm busy here?
You mean you're not coming?
It is otherwise pretty well restrained, but it is very 2003. It's definitely a dated film, which negatives and positives there. It definitely recalls an era in horror filmmaking that is well past us. We've definitely moved forward in horror filmmaking, and so it is kind of fun to revisit the tropes and the tones that you would get in these films. But that little bit of a restraint is a bit of an issue. While Jason gets a nice high body count, Freddy's attacks are mostly kinda lame. I'm fine with him basically getting no kills, but gone are the whimsical dream environments of yesteryear. We get some steamy boiler rooms, a trip to Camp Crystal Lake, and that's really about it. Everything else takes place within the characters' environments, and I get that is partially a budgetary constraint, but come on, man, give me something. Get imaginative. Jason's kills aren't even terribly memorable, so I'm not really getting either of the legends at their best here. There's also a very serious issue with the mythology. Lots of made-up bullshit, like Jason being afraid of water for some reason, and then Freddy being given a bunch of weird handicaps. I guess because he was in hell, he's weaker. I don't know. This is a very dumb film. There's a lot of little things about it that don't really make any sense. Laurie's dad, his subplot about, her mom's death is very hard to decipher within the context of the film. And you have all these kids who are kind of serious, very, TV teens of that era. I don't know. There's a lot about this that it feels very mainstream in the worst way. But I have never been against dumb. As you all should know by now, I love a good dumb movie. If a movie's fun, I give it a whole bunch of passes. And Freddy vs. Jason is a lot of fun.
Tilt.
Is it as wild and silly as it could be? Absolutely not. However, it is still a bloodthirsty, barrel of monkeys kind of flick that once it gets going and Freddy realizes his mistake and kind of almost arbitrarily decides he has to take down Jason, it becomes a total roller coaster of stupidity and death. And within that stupidity and death, I mean, you do get some fun characters. Freeberg, for example, is a really fun knockoff of Jay from Jay and Silent Bob. There's the cop guy. The cop character is pretty likable. He dies a little too early on. I forgot all these characters. Despite having watched this so many times, I forget like all these characters' names, except for Lori, because I say her name 15,000 times.
Hey, I brought Blake. Where's Linda?
It's Lori. This is her house, so don't be a total cocksmith.
And Gib, just because her name's Gib. And she's great, but she dies off pretty fast. You know, you get Catherine Isabel, and you make her kind of a dumb, alcoholic, maybe bimbo? I don't know. You never really find out exactly what her deal is because she just ends up dying. She's kind of just a stereotype to get killed off. You know, Robert Englund, of course, is great. You get that Freddy personality through and through. The boyfriend's friend is really good. He's wacky. I don't know. It's a kind of a meh arrangement of characters. They do their best, but they get a lot of very awkward dialogue. There's a lot of exposition. Poor Lori has to deliver some truly horrendous lines, and I hold nothing against her for her delivery, because there is some shit in here I cannot imagine getting right.
Wait a minute. Freddy died by fire, Jason by water. How can we use that?
And if Freddy wins?
At least Jason has home field advantage.
Welcome to my world, bitch!
Now, the only other big negative I can think of for Freddy vs. Jason, and it's a big negative, is Jason. Ken Kersinger is not necessarily awful in the role, but where Kane Hodder brought maybe a little too much personality, Ken brings almost none whatsoever. Add to that, he basically plays it as Frankenstein's monster, which, look, I know I compared Richard Brooker's take on the character to old Frankie, but, like, this is ridiculous. I didn't mean it literally. Like, I liked his stiffness. I didn't mean I needed him to just be a fucking walking board. He's stiff and uninteresting, unlike any Jason that came before, and the decision to not just cast Hodder is easily Freddy vs. Jason's most damning error, and shows that Ronnie Yu didn't really know what he was doing going on to this movie. Like, he wanted to make a Ronnie Yu movie, and he wanted to make a horror movie, but I don't think he really understood what made Jason interesting.
Well, hey, Jethro! This is a rave, not a Halloween party! Why don't you go find yourself a pig to fuck?
He borderline understands Freddy Krueger, but I really don't think he got Jason, which is really too bad. I feel like the filmmaker who was in charge of this really needed to be fully entrenched in both franchises, and I don't get that from Ronnie Yu's direction at all. I mean, Hodder had basically become the de facto fan favorite Jason, and to see him going up against Freddy would have been a fucking dream and would have made up for a lot of issues. Alas, it wasn't to be, and I guess that just has to be accepted. As I said, though, this is more a Freddy flick, and while I wish there had been a more Rennie Harlin-esque filmmaker at the helm, Ronnie Yu does do a great job with the action, and in Freddy's one proper kill gives us a nice creepy scene, outweighed by some really awkward exposition.
You didn't forget about me, did you?
Oh, that's right! Everyone forgot! That's why they weren't afraid anymore! That's why I needed Jason to kill for me to get them to remember! But now he just won't stop!
Fuck. All these flaws really highlight the overarching problem here. This is too big of a movie. New Line didn't really care that much about what the filmmakers did with Jason. You know, send him to hell, send him to space, fuck it, whatever. But with Freddy, this is the house that Freddy built. New Line Cinema is what it is because of Freddy Krueger. There's no way they're just going to say, fuck it, with Freddy. You know, his movie is damn well going to get a proper budget, a proper big director, and proper executive oversight. There's tons of plot exposition to keep the wider audience, the non-fans, up to speed, and in the first 2 acts, it often slows things down, or at least took me out of the movie for a moment. I'm not sure why it never really hit me for all these years that I've watched Freddy vs. Jason, but this time, man, it's like a fucking sledgehammer. Even the choice in Jason is an obvious decision to simplify the character down to his basest elements. Jason is big and lumbering, so let's fucking lean into that, ignoring the fact that he really isn't if you're a fan of the franchise. That said, once we do finally get our big real-world confrontation, I can't help but smile every time. Like, it is a gloriously over-the-top, outrageous, borderline pro wrestling, incredibly literal take on the concept. Now, I personally would have preferred more time in the dream world. I think that that would make for the more interesting fight, simply because Freddy Krueger, when done correctly, is a very visual character and allows for a lot of imagination and a lot of weird things to happen. You could have really gone all out, but I feel like perhaps because the budget, you know, was high, but not like that high, and we hadn't quite reached the current state of things where you can just CGI huge battles, basically no biggie. I feel like, you know, they probably cut out a lot of that more imaginative material. That being said, Freddy had plenty of great movies with great imaginative nightmare sequences without a lot of money behind them. So that's not really an excuse. It just shows a lack of imagination in the follow-through of this idea. Plus, I mean, Freddy Krueger, honestly, like, let's be honest, he shouldn't have lasted more than a minute in the real world against Jason. He can barely handle teenagers in the real world. Fucking minus part 2. I know in Nightmare on Elm Street 2, he does kill a lot of teenagers in the real world, but that's by his own volition. You know, he uses the body to enter the real world as a demonic force, whereas, you know, usually when he's brought into the real world, it's not nearly as good a time for the old Krugmeister. Anyway, so Freddy vs. Jason, yeah, I can't say, like, I don't hate it, but I think, like, this is a weird thing to say, because it is definitely a better made movie than this, and it definitely probably has more positives overall, but I think I enjoyed Jason Takes Manhattan more on this watch through than I did Freddy vs. Jason, which is wild. Very wild. We'll see. You know, my opinion tends to change a bit even while I'm editing these videos, so maybe my opinion will change a little bit. But right now, it's not looking good for Freddy vs. Jason when I do my inevitable ranking, because, like, this was a bit of a slog, and I wasn't expecting that. That being said, it could also be that I've just watched this movie so many times that its flaws are more readily apparent to me. I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you think, because I am not a very objective source on this one. You know, I've seen all of the movies a bunch of times, but this is the one that I really, like, watched a fuckload of times. So, you know, it could just be, again, too many times watching the movie. Let me know what you think, because I had a big problem with this one this time, and I was not expecting that. I was expecting to have a fucking great time. Anyway, the Blu-ray, here it is. Bada boop. As you can see, there's a little extra guy in the insert there. Nothing too crazy. I do like this alternate artwork, but I'll just keep it with it as is. So this is, despite the new packaging, this is just the old fucking Blu-ray. This is literally, I mean, even the artwork is the same as the old Blu-ray. The menu is the same. Everything's the same here. There is no difference outside of a missing audio track, which we already talked about in the first video. So yeah, and all of these special features, as far as I can tell, I might be off by like 1 or 2, but I'm pretty sure every single special feature, including the commentary, was in turn ported over from the DVD. So really, we haven't gotten anything new since the DVD release, minus a better transfer. And this is a nice transfer. Like, it looks great. It's just, it's the same one as before. Whereas the other films in this set have all gotten like little cosmetic touch-ups at the very least, this is just the exact same thing. And that is frustrating, just because I feel like, in the intervening years, we could have gotten something new. I'm sure, like, basically no one in this cast has gone on to anything super crazy big. I can't imagine they couldn't have gotten one or two interviews, maybe a new commentary. Like, there had to be something they could have done, and they didn't, and that's annoying. There is that chance that this was a contractual thing. It's entirely possible. I don't know what the inner workings are here, but studios do this sort of thing a lot, where they place very arbitrary rules on the companies distributing the kind of third-party companies distributing these movies. So that's entirely possible, but either which way, it is a little frustrating to see it not given the proper treatment. I'm willing to bet if a Nightmare on Elm Street set gets released with this included, that might be a different story, because again, Freddy Krueger, but I don't know. I just don't know. As far as extras here, I'm not going to go through and detail all of them. That seems like a waste of time. It's the same as the DVD. They're mostly standard def or like 480 presentations. They don't look amazing, but let's see. Notably, you get a 10-minute look at the film's convoluted development, which touches on this old cult plot involving the Fred heads, and then how the writers, Shannon and Swift, came on board with their take, which was apparently a much longer take, like 120 pages of script, so a 2-hour movie, and then they brought in David Goyer to rework the script and bring it down, which I think is why we have so much really needless exposition in this film. I feel like a lot of that comes down to, we need to simplify this, meld scenes together. I still don't think it's necessary with what we're given, but they feel they need to explain it to the idiots in back, I guess. It's a weird, like, it feels like they're talking down to the audience a lot in this movie, and that frustrates the crap out of me. Let's see. There's also a nice 35-minute chat with VFX supervisor Ariel Velasco-Shaw and VFX producer Kevin Elam that delves into the special effects, which is actually pretty fascinating and educational. I really liked listening to them talk about these. They're obviously kind of dated because they're 2003 effects, and we've changed a bit, but it's interesting because, like, there's a lot of stuff in here that you could pretty easily do yourself, especially like the characters transforming on the dead body in the forest, the got your nose bit, stuff like that would not be that hard today. So that's interesting to look at and see kind of how far we've come since then. Let's see. We also get a bunch of deleted scenes, including the original ending and an alternate ending that's described by the writers and the VFX dudes, and sounds an awful lot like the ending to Cabin in the Woods to an extent. Then we get a theatrical trailer, TV spots, and a pre-fight weigh-in from the film's promotion in 2003. There's a few other extras, there's a music video, other featurettes, but again, it's all just ported over. It's nothing new. So yeah, this release is frustrating. It's very frustrating, but it's on the plus side. It's Freddy vs. Jason. It is pretty fun. Just you watch enough times, you start seeing that there's a lot of flaws to deal with. I still think it is an enjoyable watch. I don't think it's a bad movie, but I do think that it's very dated in a very bad way. And, you still get some cool Jason moments where he cuts like Freeburg in half, for example, or that sweet kill with the machete going through the crops and hitting the guy and him spitting out the blood that he very obviously has in his mouth, chipmunkin', stuff like that is fine. Our characters are, I'm going to say, okay. They're not amazing. I think Gib was my favorite, but she dies pretty early on. And yeah. Oh, and we do get that awesome bed death. That bed death with Trey is fantastic. That's definitely the best death in the movie. And one of those Jason kills that actually works. Whereas a lot of the Jason kills in this are kind of, fine. They're fine. I don't know how I got that head to stay on so perfectly. That's a weird one. Anyway, if you never owned a physical release of this movie before, it's chock full of extras. If you have, you've seen it all before. And there's a commentary with Ronnie Yu and Robert Englund and Ken Kersinger. It's fine. It's very much like they talk about a lot of filmmaking aspects, but they also just kind of like point things out. So it's a perfectly fine commentary. If you enjoy this movie, it's an enjoyable listen. But that is, again, ported over from the old DVD release. So That's that. It's disappointing. But it is, you know what? I kind of like with Jason X, where it's like, it's unique because it's Jason in space, really, but that's what it comes down to. Even, it's the campy one and stuff, but really it's Jason in space. This one is unique because it's Freddy versus Jason, and it's Jason in the 21st century. And it's stiff wooden Jason that I don't particularly care for, and I think might actually be the worst Jason in the franchise. Anyway, that being said, thank you so much for watching. I look forward to ending this soon. There's 2 more videos. We got 1 review and 1 secret video to go, and then that's it for Friday the 13th, man. This has been a lot of fun. So let me know in the comments what you thought of this movie. And yeah, check me out on the Patreon. Check out my merch store down below. Get them deets, get them shirts. Oh yeah. And until next time, guys, come on. Go watch a movie.